Okay. Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm very happy to be here with Linda Chardiello, um, who was, hey, Linda. Hi.
Hi, hi.
How are you?
I'm
She
fine.
was,
Yeah, nice to see you, Gabriella.
thank you. Nice
Thank
to
you,
see you too,
thank
finally.
you for doing this. It's about time somebody did what you're doing, so thank you for doing it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of this stuff online written down, a lot of your stories. I'm familiar with these stories, but I think it's different when people actually talk about it and have a conversation about it. And I'm not sure why it's different, but I do think it's different. And also, we live in a more visual age, maybe people respond better to images and videos. So I think maybe it's useful to get this. These are documents, these are testimonies, I think, that are important
Yeah,
for to put out there and to help maybe people
hopefully.
who are in similar situation right now with the NKT. So you
Yeah,
were part of the NKT for
yeah.
a while.
In the
Yeah.
very early days of it, it was very early on, back in 1992, I think it was. So yeah, nearly 30, well, more than 30 years ago. So
Yeah. How many years were you involved, more or
about,
less?
about 5 years.
But you
Four,
were very deep in, you were very deeply involved as far as I understand, correct?
uh, I, kind of, but as I've said before, I think they didn't quite trust that I was enough of a devotee. So I mean, I did teach for a little while. What happened was I started going because I started the first thing that happened was I saw an advert in the local paper for a class on the art of positive thinking. And a friend of mine who I was struggling with depression, and I thought she was very negative in her outlook. I suggested to her, I said, do you fancy going to this talk on the art of positive thinking? And she said, all right then. So we went. And I was really bowled over by it, but she wasn't. So she didn't take to it at all. But
Mm.
I was at a time in my life I was about 30, and I was prime kind of material for them really. And I'd been working in television as a researcher, and then I'd gone off traveling. I'd got disillusioned with the whole kind of career thing. And I wanted to do something different with my life, I suppose. So I was at a crossroads in my life, didn't really know really what the way forward was for myself. And then when I came across this, the talk was given by Gen Tubton, Neil Elliott, and he's quite charismatic. Well, I suppose at that time, I don't know if I would be taken in by him now so much, but back then,
He was much younger at that time, right? He looked different, probably. This
it
was,
wasn't the way he looked, it was his sense of humor. You know,
oh,
he
okay.
was able to, he was saying things that I had sort of been thinking for a long time, like, hang on a minute, what's it all about? It's this, I was trying to find a way to be happy, and the teaching about how happiness comes from within, and your mind is like a blue sky, and the negative thoughts are like clouds that come through. And I don't know, there was certain things that he said which sort of chimed with how I was feeling. And then I remember at the end of the talk going to have a look at the books, and they were all by Geshe Gyatso. That's what it said on the cover. And I didn't twig really that there was something odd about that. the one I picked up was the 21 Stages of the Path, Joyful Path of Enlightenment. And I thought, well, this sounds, yes, this is what I'm looking for. The path to enlightenment, 21 steps, and I can be enlightened. So I got really sort of taken in by it. And then I started going to the general program classes, because this was a public talk that they'd brought in Gen Tubton to do the public talk to attract people, new people. And
Was
so
this for free of charge,
yeah, that
or?
was free of charge. And then I started going to
Yeah.
regular Thursday evening classes, and I absolutely loved them. I used to go every week, pay my little fee. I was engaged at the time to a young man who's a bit younger than me, and he wasn't into it either. Um, he I remember taking him to one of the classes. He said, "Yeah, it's full of old women."
What about your friend who went with you? What did she say about, do you remember what her reaction was,
She
or?
didn't like the whole idea of karma, because he
Okay.
talked about karma, and because she'd had certain bad things happen to her, she didn't like the idea that she was in any way responsible. You know, she had a very much of a victim mentality, really, and she didn't want to sort of think that she was in any way responsible for what happened to her. That it was nothing to do with her. I think gradually over
Okay.
the years, she's actually come to realise that she does have a part to play in her own destiny. She's not just a victim, but it took sort of psychotherapy and all sorts of stuff to help her work it out. But I remember I was getting, after I'd been going for a while, I started putting a shrine together, and she's going, "I'm really surprised that you're doing that." And I suppose I was surprised as well, because I mean, I think, I was brought up as a Jehovah's Witness, well, Catholic to begin with, and then my mum converted to become Jehovah's Witness. And I was really into that when I was like 11, 12, 13. And then when I got to about 15, I was like, hang on a minute, this doesn't really add up. So I was lucky enough to be able to walk away from that quite easily, because my
So
dad.
did the NKT seem different from that in the beginning?
Well, I'd studied a bit of Buddhism when I was at school, and I always thought it sounded interesting, and I liked it. And I actually did go for a little while to the Nichiren Shoshu Buddhist group, the Soka Gakkai, as they became known later, where they all
Yeah.
chanted that Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and I thought that was weird. So I didn't really get into that, because they were, as far as I could see, they were using their mantras and their spirituality for material gain. Oh, you want that Rolls Royce? Just chant for it and you'll get it. You want that job at the BBC? Chant for it and you'll get it. And I just thought it's a bit cheesy. So, but I still had this sort of notion that Buddhism was somehow different from other religions, that it wasn't really a religion. In fact, people say that to me now, Buddhism's not really a religion. And I'm like, well, actually, it is. It is a religion.
Yeah.
But I kind of had this idea that it wasn't really religion, that it was more of a psychology, of a way of understanding the mind, way of understanding human psyche and all the rest of it. And I can remember going to Manjushri at Christmas in 92, I think it was. And I didn't really want to get into doing the prostrations, but my admin director of the sector where I lived, she said, well, that's just your ego. And if you want to really progress on this path, you have to overcome your egoic self, and prostrations helps you to overcome your ego mind. And I was like, oh, all right then. So I started doing prostrations, but I always found it, all this, oh, Geshe-la this, Geshe-la that, I was like, I never got into that. So I never really became a devotee of Geshe-la. And I can remember actually in the original book of the 21 Stages of the Path, Joyful Path, the first stage of the path was reliance on your spiritual guide. They've changed it, I think, since then. And I remember saying to Deirdre, who was the admin director, but I don't know who my spiritual guide is. And she said, I said, is Morton, because Morton Clausen was my teacher. I said, is Morton my spiritual guide? And she said, no, it's Geshe-la, of course. And I was like, but I've never met him. And she was like, no, but he is your spiritual guide. And I was like, oh, okay. So
Yeah.
so things like that, but because I worked hard and I was really into the Dharma, I loved the teaching. I loved all the sort of, the difference between love and attachment, and how to deal with anger, through practicing patience, and understanding that when difficult things happen to you, that it's an opportunity to develop your capacity to practice patience, things like that. And because I'd always had a bit of a temper on me, and patience was not my strength, and it still isn't. But I was comparing. I said, oh yeah, Jesus always used to say, if somebody attacks you, then you should turn the other cheek. Practice patience, basically. And I'd be like, well, I don't really know how you can do that. I didn't understand. And for me, Buddhism offered you a way of rationally thinking it through to help you to, have something to hold on to, so that you could practice patience, rather than just counting to 10 and then, which was the best advice I'd heard up till then.
But did these teachings that you learned about patience and anger management in the NKT, did they actually work for you at that time in
I
the
think
early days?
they kind of worked sort of superficially, but they didn't really, because I was suppressing, you know, and being a bit fake, probably. And I think I knew that kind of subconsciously, because I was always sort of laughing about it, because eventually what happened was I helped to set up the centre in Windsor. It was Shantideva Centre. We got a residential property and I moved in, and I was, working my whatever off and really working hard. I gave up my job.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about how that went? Like this setting up this center? Like I read something about you wrote a blog about this, but not you didn't provide a lot of detail. You did say that it was good you didn't have any savings, because you would have lost your savings as well when you were setting up this center. How,
Well,
how did that work? Like, how did you guys set up that center?
we didn't have the money to buy a place, so we just rented a house. I
Because it would have been the individuals, the individual
I would have,
practitioners
yeah, I mean, aside,
buying. It wasn't the organization,
no,
right?
no, we had to buy it. We would have had to buy it ourselves, yeah. So it would be like the members would have been buying it. I mean, we never got that far because there was absolutely no chance. Property's always been expensive in Windsor, in this area, and even back then it was out of our reach. But we thought we could rent a place, so that's what we did. We rented somewhere, and
And you put up the money, you put up the
well, it wasn't
deposit, the
really.
rent.
You had to pay a deposit to move in, but it wasn't a big, I think I got my deposit back when I left, although I can't really remember, to be honest, whether I did or not. Yeah, so we just had a rented place.
Okay.
Going around looking at different houses that we could just rent. We went to see quite a few places. And then we got this place in the centre of Windsor, and we started running the foundation program classes there. We had been running foundation program classes already in the admin director's house, and people did. I mean, I was still seeing friends and stuff, and most of the people I knew didn't want to have anything to do with it. They were
Your
all,
friends.
yeah. Every every single one of them actually. It would be like, oh, you sure? You know, they didn't their antenna were better than mine, really. You know, and I haven't been able. Well, I've barely been able to live it down all these years. You know, they will say, "Well, you're a bit gullible, aren't you? You fell for that lot," and you know. You fell for that, and yeah, I mean, I didn't really feel like I did fall for it because I still have respect for Buddhism, really, and I didn't fully fall for the whole cult devotee thing. You know, probably a bit like you. You never really kind of no, but I valued the teachings. You know, the Buddha Dharma, and its Buddha Dharma is brilliant. You know, it's wonderful in a lot of ways. Um, and you know, at the core of it, you know, the emptiness teachings, the teachings on the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. I thought, yes, you know, I got that, and I was like, yeah, it all makes sense. It all makes sense, and it was the logical sort of it all making sense part of it was what drew me in. The religious side of it and the devoting side of it, you know, devotion to the spiritual God. I was like, no, you know, I don't really that just,
Developing faith, devotion, merit, blessings, doing these
but
things
you know, I didn't
for
really.
merit.
I mean, I was brought up as a Jehovah's Witness, so I was this proselytizing thing. I wanted to evangelize, you know, it was in my blood.
Yeah, it was normal for you, right?
So
There
I
was
want,
nothing strange. There was nothing strange about it. Because normally Buddhists don't proselytize like Christians do, you know.
well,
So that
I had
is
nothing to compare it with really, because
exactly.
the Nichiren Shoshu Gakkai group, they're quite evangelical as well.
Yeah, right.
So, I hadn't really come across any other kind of Buddhism, and you couldn't, you know, there was no internet or anything.
Right.
I didn't, I never ever related to Shugden, you know, the pictures of Shugden. I was like, what is that? You know, what's going on here? And my teacher Morton, he gave me a little statue of Shugden to put on my shrine. I was like, okay. So I put it on my shrine, but I sort of hid it because I didn't like it. You know, I had a feeling that there was just something not quite, you know, and then
Well, it is a scary image, right? Like it's riding on this lion, it's got the fangs and the sword, right?
it
It's a
wasn't even so much,
scary.
it wasn't so much that one. It was the one with him as a monk. So he's a monk on a thing. He's got fangs.
Fangs, yeah.
That was the weird one, with a sort of round hat and a sort of
Yeah.
ugly looking monk with a third eye. And I don't know.
Third eye. It
Well,
is scary, yeah.
it didn't really. I just didn't. I didn't wasn't scared of it. I just didn't like it. You know, just thought, don't like that, and it didn't appeal to me. Whereas, you know, Tara, Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri,
Sure.
you know, those the deities, they did appeal to me. You know, I liked, no, you know, but I never liked the prayers either. You know, I can remember thinking, finding it really boring. You know, all this chanting of prayers. I didn't get into it really. I tried. I thought I had to do that. I thought that was because the thing is, you go to these GP classes and you hear all this wonderful stuff, you know, and you think, yeah. I want to get enlightened. You know, it's like, I'm going to get enlightened. So I'm going to do what it takes to get enlightened. And then all of a sudden, so then you move into the center or you start going to the FP and then you get more and more involved in it. And the more involved, the bizarre thing about it is the more involved you get in it, the less powerful it is. I found, you know, that the meditation just didn't work for me at all. You know, doing all this chanting, and we hardly ever did it. We didn't do any meditation. We just did chanting. That was it. You know,
Yeah.
meditation. Well, we did a bit of this, what they call contemplation, you know, where they would give a talk and then they would say, right, this is what you're going to focus on in your meditation. And then but it was all hit up in the head. And I remember I did the highest yoga tantra empowerment, and then there was this Dakini yoga practice you were supposed to do every day. And there was just visualize this, visualize that, visualize this, and then this, and then that. And I was like, it's all up here. It's all in my head. I'm not embodied. So
Yeah,
I felt that
exactly.
that just didn't feel like it was doing anything, because surely it's not about what your head, you know. So I mean, it became obvious that it wasn't working for me at all when well, after, I mean, yeah, first of all, I got chucked out of Shanti Deva Centre after setting it up.
So
And
wait. So you set up this center. Did you move in? You
yeah,
moved in,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
You
I
started working for the center.
yes,
I've read something that you left your career, you got on the dole
yeah.
with
Well, I mean,
your teacher kind of.
I'd already kind of abandoned my television career in a way, because I just didn't really like that world. And I'd started working in an educational video company, which was okay. I quite liked it. But for me, it was like, oh, enlightenment, that's what it's all about. This is my life's purpose, to get enlightened and to help other people get enlightened. I can remember thinking, yeah, the Bodhisattva path is, well, what could be better than that, to serve others and help them to find.
Yeah, I think it's very easy to get hooked for a good-hearted person, right? Someone who is empathic and wants to help and wants to better themselves, right? It's very easy to fall for this kind of um, trope, right? That the NKT is giving you. And then
Exactly.
you start working. At some point, you realize that neither the teachings nor that lifestyle is very conductive. At least that's what happened to me, that I felt that just going to the center, like you're saying, there was not a lot of meditation going on. And whenever we got into the meditation part, after like 10 minutes, it was interrupted by the chanting. And I actually really hated the chanting because I never understood what I was singing and I didn't understand. It was like really long too, like 30, 40 minutes of singing, chanting. And just really, really boring. And it didn't help me in any way to feel more peaceful or understand something of the teachings. Well, anyway, I'm sorry that I interrupted you, but yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's easy to fall for this thing if you are a naturally compassionate uh, person who wants
yeah.
to, you know.
Well, I've always had this very altruistic kind of drive, of wanting,
Exactly.
to 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 be a force for good in the world. That was always, to be. And I can remember actually when I was at university, this young man who I fancied said to me, "What's your ambition?" And I said, "My ambition is to be as selfless as Jesus was." And that's when I was like
Wonderful.
20, and I'd given up Jehovah's Witness and given up Catholicism. I wasn't practicing any religion at the time. But I thought, yeah, that's, to true selflessness. I didn't even realize what that means actually, obviously then. And now I know what selflessness, I've got a better idea of what selflessness means. I didn't understand anything. I mean, it was only really when I left that I started doing the work on myself and all my neuroses, you know, they all came to the surface. I suppose they were there all along, but
Sure.
but yes,
So when you moved into the center, you started working for them, like full time, or
yeah,
did you
because
have responsibilities in the
I was the
center?
education program coordinator, and I helped to set up branch classes, do public talks. It just seemed to be a lot of work, and I can remember just finding it just too much, really. There was like constant pressure to, even down to things like changing the water bowls on the shrine every day, things like that, which, I don't know, it just seemed endless. There was never any time off. And I ended up having almost like a collapse, really. And then this other lady that was in the centre, she said, well, why don't you step down from the role and let someone else do it if you're finding it too much? I said, well, there's no one else to do it. I can't. Who will do it if I don't do it? She said, well, I'll do it. And I was like, really? And so she said, yeah. And I was like, great, be my guest. Go. Yeah, I'll just take a back seat again. But then as soon as she I mean it, but this religion, this NKT attracts people who have got altruistic tendencies, but it also attracts people who want power. That's the thing. And she seemed to be of the second variety. She sort of fancied herself as this really sort of special person. When she took over from my job, she started calling herself the lineage holder and things like that.
Oh my God.
And throwing her weight around, being really sort of unpleasant to people as well when they weren't doing what they were supposed to do and stuff, and shouting at them down the phone, and I'd be like, can't really get, how can you? No, I fell out with her big time, and she was the one who threw me out of the centre because we used to do heart jewel every day, and then there's some point in the middle of heart jewel where you were supposed to meditate, have a 5-minute actual meditation. You're not just going chant, chant, chant. And she said, oh, we're not doing that anymore because they're trying to they want to make all the centres practice in the same way, so they're not having it. And I was like, but that's the best bit. I don't want to stop that. That's not how we were taught. Wharton taught us that we're supposed to meditate during that period, and then I'm not going. And she also took out loads of pictures from the meditation room that we had. So that we're only going to have picture of Geshe-la, picture of Shugden, and this another one.
Interesting.
And I was like, oh, well, what that? No, I don't agree with that. And I certainly didn't agree with this meditation. So I was arguing with her about it. And then there was a girl that was living in the centre, another young woman, slightly older than me, who wasn't in the NKT, really. She'd been a Buddhist, so she wasn't working, she wasn't working her backside off for the centre and for the NKT. So they said to her, you've got to move out. And she was devastated. She wasn't English. She'd come from another country. She didn't really have much support in this country. And she was terrified. Where am I going to go? I haven't got any. They hardly get, less than a month's notice. It was like, get out as soon as.
They didn't care.
So
they didn't care. And then you guys were working for free, right? You were not getting paid or anything.
Oh no.
This was all volunteering.
Yeah, and they started this. At that time, that's when they decided that they were going to go and conquer America. And I was never asked to go to America. And I think it's because of what I was telling you about the fact that although I was hardworking and intelligent and all the rest of it, I wasn't enough of a devotee. So they didn't ask me to go.
You didn't have strong enough faith, as they
say. I didn't believe in Geshe-la. I never believed in him. I never really believed in him at all.
Why not?
Well, one of the reasons, I suppose, was I went to his, because they said, oh, Geshe-la's coming to London. Geshe-la's coming to London. You must go and listen to his talk. So I was like, okay, love to, So I went to the talk. I was so bored. Couldn't understand a word he was saying. Hardly anything. I was falling asleep all the way through it. And I just felt nothing. Absolutely no connection to him at all. Didn't feel any.
Yeah, it's really hard to understand him. I watch these videos without the subtitles, and EFL teacher, I'm used to accents, but it's really, really hard to understand when he speaks. It's weird. He's got a really strong accent.
You know what I think's happened really with him, and I think really what happened. This is just my theory that Gen Tubton or Neil Elliott kind of saw an opportunity with him, and he was the one really who wanted to set up an organization, and he got Kelsang Getso on board as the figurehead. Because for him to set up his own version of a Buddhist, tradition, which is a joke, it's not a tradition at all, because they just started it in 92 or 91, whatever it was. If he tried to do that without a Tibetan Lama, they wouldn't have had any kudos. So it's a bit like, I don't know if you ever saw that film. Oh, I can't remember the name of it now. It was a journalist who decided to set up a cult, just as an experiment. And the way he did it was, he dressed up and he put on an accent and all the rest of it. But he had some acolytes, Americans that went to the town and were going, this guru's coming. This amazing guru's coming. You must, and so then everybody was like, really, so it's like they're setting it up.
Yeah.
So you think, oh, there must be something really special about him because these people are saying he's really special. And that's what people get infected by, I think. And I think because everybody's saying, oh, he's wonderful. And unless you start going along going, oh, yeah, he's really wonderful. Oh, the kind guru and all the rest of it, then you're never going to climb the ladder. You're never going to be important in the group because you're not going, yes, Geshe-la's the most Geshe-la says,
You're not playing the game. And I think everybody knows this. It's like a game, really. I mean, I honestly think that most people in the NKT understand that, at least the older people. I mean, the younger generation that never actually even met him, they have no idea. But the older people must know that he was, I don't know, he wasn't that wonderful. And also the stories that I hear about him, there's so many people saying things about, like, negative things about him, how he didn't help them, or he got angry with them, or I don't know, like, somewhere they must know that he wasn't that great. It's just they're denying it. It's some kind of a denial. They
I
can't
don't know. I
face
think it's
it.
like groupthink. People get taken in by groupthink. And I suppose I've never been someone who gets taken in particularly by groupthink, certainly not as an adult. And I only met him once. I mean, I'm one of the very early people to have been involved in the organization. I mean, like 1992, and I only met him once, and that was not easy. I had to make an appointment and wait for ages because this is when I'd moved into Majamaka Centre after I got thrown out of Shantideva Centre for falling out with the woman who took over my job. And I moved to Majamaka Centre. So I wasn't banned from the NKT. They just chucked me out of that centre. And so I moved to Majamaka. And I kept complaining to everybody about how terrible it was, what they'd done there and everything, thinking that this was a one-off and something would be done about it. But nobody was interested. I remember going to see Samden. And as I was telling him about how awful this woman was and what she'd done and blah, 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 and he was just smiling at
Oh my
me
God.
like that. No, they're,
Wow.
they're there. You'll be, yes, don't worry about it. Goodbye, out you go. And I hated all these heart jewel, wish fulfilling jewel, Dakini yoga, guru yoga, protective practice, you know, just chanting. I hated all that. I liked the studying, found that quite interesting, and I've been always quite good at learning things off by heart. So I felt quite proud of myself, you know. Oh, I got top marks in my in my exam, you know, because I'm good at learning things off by heart. And
Well, so wait a second. You said you actually met Cal Sangyatso. You had an
yes,
appointment with him.
I
You made
did,
a
because I was struggling with all these practices. I was all this reciting I was supposed to do every day, and I hated it, and it wasn't doing me any good. I wanted to stop doing Dakini yoga. I thought I shouldn't have ever done that highest yoga tantra. I wasn't ready for it, and I didn't understand any of it. You know, I didn't get it at all. And I mean, I couldn't even keep my mind on my breath for 20
yeah.
seconds, let alone do all this. I don't know. I still don't really get it what that's all about, and I don't think it's necessary anyway. I think it's anyway. Because I was struggling with it, I wanted to go and see him and ask him for some advice. You know, I just want to meditate. I just want to learn how to meditate and how to actually be at peace. You know, how to be centered and find that inner peace that they keep talking about. And these practices aren't working for me. So can I have some advice? What can I do? And he said, well, just do heart jewel every day. And if you have time, do wish fulfilling jewel. And if you have time, just do no, he said, don't do the long version of Dakini yoga, just do the short version of it, which is what I was doing anyway. And I was like, help me at
Oh,
all. There was nothing, you know, he wasn't interested in me. He didn't want to know anything about me. Nothing. And I just went and I felt nothing from him, no compassion, no love, no interest, absolutely zilch. So yeah, when I came out of that meeting, I was like, what is all the fuss about this man? I don't get it. What are they going on about? You know, it just seemed incredibly ordinary and nothing, you know, maybe he has got realizations, probably has got some level of realization, but it certainly didn't seem to have any compassion. Not that I could be aware of anyway, not that I felt. I mean, like I worked in counselling and working with people a lot, you know. And when I meet people for the first, I mean, I'm doing this sound healing now, I do one-to-one sessions, and people come and I talk to them for ages. They tell me everything, you know, and I'm trying to be there, present for them, like
sure.
to be uh help them to understand themselves where they're at, and you know, and to be a sympathetic ear, you know, not give them advice, but just to be able to listen and be interested and actually care. And I didn't get
Right.
that. I didn't feel that he cared about me one iota. You know, it was like, oh, another one. Okay, how long did it do? Right, bye. You know,
And you never saw him again. You never
that was
had
it.
any more access to him. Hmm.
No, I never even, apart from that one talk that he did in London that time, and he did do some of the summer festivals again, which I couldn't understand what he was talking about most of the time. I mean, gradually I got a little bit more used to the fact that when he says "huh," it's actually an F, like the pyre is the fire. So I started to understand a little bit more of what he was saying, but even so, no. So yeah, it never really. I mean, it introduced me to my time with English. It introduced me to some of the ideas of Buddhism that I hadn't really known about before, particularly about emptiness and about, you know, things like how to practice patience helped me a bit, but they didn't really get to what I was really doing was doing spiritual bypassing, which is I only worked that out later, you know, because I
Yeah.
came across the book by is it, I can't remember, Masters or John Wellwood, I can't remember now, but I read a book on spiritual bypassing. And it was like, oh, right. That's
So
what.
just for our listeners and viewers, what is spiritual bypass?
Uh,
What does
Avoidance in holy drag. That's the quote that I remember thinking, yes, avoidance in holy drag. So pretending, that you're not upset, pretending that you're not sad or not angry or whatever. It's just sort of just avoiding your feelings, like suppressing the feelings, really. Um,
yeah,
and that goes on a lot. And I don't know, there just seemed so much hypocrisy. I just couldn't get it. When I was living at the Majimaka Centre, I remember I gave a lift once to one of the young teachers, going to a branch teaching, just north of Pocklington. And I was driving him in my car, and there was his wife was sitting in the back. And on the road, it was in the winter and it was raining, very cold, and we were going on this quite a main road from York to Thirsk, I think it was. And there was a man standing on the side of the road hitchhiking, and I thought, oh, poor bloke, he's trying to get wherever he's trying to go. I'll stop and give him a lift. So, so I pulled over, and the guy that was going to, what are you doing? I said, well, there's somebody there wants a lift. And I thought, well, we're going that way. We can. No, don't be ridiculous. We can't be giving people lifts. That's like, but what? And by then, the man got in the car, and there was a bit of a smell of beer. And so then we sat there, and the teacher guy, he was really angry with me. And then we dropped him off, and I said, well, hang on a minute, I thought this was about practicing compassion. This somebody's in need here, and we could give him a lift. We had a space in the car. It's practicing. He said, what about the compassion for the people that come to my class? I was trying to prepare myself in the car, and all I could smell was alcohol and da, 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 and and it was completely inappropriate. You shouldn't have done that. You should have asked my permission. Da, da, da. And I was like, ah. If
right.
we're not practicing compassion towards people in need, what's the point of what we're doing? This doesn't make any sense. Anyway, he never forgave me, that guy. I apologized to him the next day, and he's like looking down his nose at me.
Incredible. I have so many of these stories too, it's this daily, everyday compassion, totally not only missing, but just like the contrary, like just complete indifference to a suffering human who could easily be helped with a tiny gesture,
Yeah.
or that's the thing that kind of made me that surprised me, that there were these situations where people could have been easily helped just a tiny bit, with a tiny gesture. But instead of helping them, like I had to listen to this tirade about how like that is not compassion. The real compassion is giving dharma and da da da, and it's just all upside down, really, in the
Mhm.
in the NKT. Like giving a sandwich to a homeless person, or a little bit of money to somebody who's asking you for change. That's meaningless. That's not compassion in the NKT. It's like only giving dharma is meaningful. And I even said to my friend and teacher at the time, I said, well, then let's give them dharma then. Let's go and talk to them about it. But he wasn't willing to do that either.
Mm.
So it's a huge hypocrisy. I think you're right. That's
Yeah,
what they,
that was it. There was
yeah.
hypocrisy all the way through. I mean, when that girl that I was living with in the Shanty Davis Centre got thrown out, they asked her to leave. I was outraged. I was going, you know, she needs help, this woman. She hasn't got anyone to turn to. She hasn't got any money. Where's she going to go? You know, I had to lend her the money to get a room somewhere. And she managed to get some money from her ex-husband as well, who came in and bailed her out. But if she hadn't had me and her ex-husband, she'd be like, tough shit, you know, you're out. And I said, I was going, would ever Kishvara do that? You know, would they really throw someone out like that? And they'd be like, and she said to me things like, it is not for you to question this. This is the will of Geshe-la. And I said, is it? I don't know. I haven't heard it from Geshe-la. I'm hearing it from you. You know, why is it? How is it the will of Geshe-la? And anyway, you know, I'm allowed to question. The Buddha said you're supposed to question. You know, then it was like, you are so negative. You are such a negative person. So that's what I mean when I say I was in deep into the organization. I was in deep in the sense of I was devoted to actually the Dharma and helping people. I was devoted to giving Dharma. That's what I was devoted to. I wasn't devoted to Geshe Kylsen Gatsen, and I wasn't devoted to Shugden, that's for sure. Yeah.
So what was that final push that pushed you over the edge where you decided to just leave forever? Like, was there a point where you felt like that's it? I gotta go. I can't stay here anymore. Or what was it a gradual thing?
It was gradual. I mean, just before I was there, I was only at the Majimaka Centre for about 4 months. It wasn't very long. And they put me in charge of the kitchen. So I was in charge of doing lunches every day for 35 people, plus at the weekends, courses. And I was running
Wow.
the little food shop they had. So used to have to go to the cash and carry and get the supplies for it, keep all the accounts for, you know, do all that. And anyway, one day we were running a day course and I was in charge of cooking. And I'd asked I was managing the cooking, but we had people that were doing the cooking. So given them the instructions, right, we're going to have roast potatoes. What you've got to do is cut them up quite small, parboil them, and then put them in the oven. And this monk hadn't cut them up small. He cut them big potatoes into four and didn't parboil them. So he put them straight in the oven. 1 o'clock came and they weren't ready, nowhere near ready, you know. And when I realised, you know, all these people had come for the day course, they came out, and I was going, "Oh my God, the potatoes are still raw." And what we're going to do? What we're going to do? You know, it's like potatoes for 80 people, raw, and
Wow.
and uh, and then I had this other monk coming out. There's lots of hungry people out here waiting for the food. I was like, "Yes, all right. I'm trying to sort it out. Give me a chance, you know." So then I got all the potatoes out of the oven and I put them in big pans of boiling water and boiled them. And we served the lunch about 20 minutes late. But I was so stressed out and so annoyed with the monk who I'd told to do this. And I sorted out the problem, but then I didn't eat anything. I ran back to my room and I was crying my eyes out. I was hysterical. I was so stressed and upset. And it was my ego because everyone had always been saying, "Oh, Linda, you're so good at running the kitchen. Your food's wonderful." Blah, blah, blah. I was like, I'm really good at it. And I'd messed up. So it was like, oh, I've made a mess of it. You know, it's all my fault. But I was crying my eyes out and I was in such a state. And then I thought to myself, hang on a minute. I'm here supposed to be meditating to get a peaceful mind so that I can handle stress and deal with things in a calm way. And I'm worse than ever. I'm worse than ever. This just isn't working. This isn't working. And I didn't like it there either, you know, it was very unfriendly. It was a cold place, you know, and there was quite a cliquey feel to it as well. Like because Lucy James lived there. Morton had just left, I think, to go to America. There was Nick Gillespie, and there was a bit of a sort of like the hierarchy, sort of, the people who everybody looked up to. And then there was
Yeah.
plebs, the rest of us. And everyone just used to sort of scurry off back to their rooms, and people didn't really talk to each other. And there was one girl who I did make become a bit friendly with. And she had mental illness, she was completely paranoid. She'd go and have a conversation with someone, and then she'd come and she'd say, "Oh, they don't like me. They don't like me. I could tell by the way they looked at me." And I'd be like, "What? What did they say?" And then it became clear after a while that she was just mentally unwell, you know,
Yeah.
and it wasn't being addressed at all. I don't know what happened to her in the long run, so it was that incident where I completely lost my cool, and I thought, this isn't working. And the fact that the centre was full of people who didn't seem to be, there was hypocrisy, coldness, lots of ego, people weren't very friendly, there was just nothing to recommend it really, apart from it was quite a nice grounds. And, and I thought, I don't want to spend the rest of my life doing this. I couldn't see myself also being so poor as well, because I was fed up with being on the dole, and not having any money and not being able to fix my car when it broke down, or, because I didn't have any money. I thought, I need to get a job. I need to do something real. So I got a job in social services. I applied for a job in social services, and that's when I left the centre and I went back down to Windsor. I didn't completely leave the NKT because at the time I thought something wrong with me. That I wasn't good enough, or whatever, because there were some people who'd be like, oh, loved the prayers and all that. And I was like, why can't I be like that? Wish I was really into doing Dakini yoga every day like they are. Um, but I just didn't feel it was working, for me. So then I left there and I got this job at the social services in Slough, and I moved back in with my boyfriend that I hadn't really broken up with when I left anyway. And then I remember going back to the centre to GP classes, and I only went once or twice, and I put my hand up. I think I've written about this, how one time I was there and she was talking about anger, and how there was nothing good to say about anger. Anger's the worst thing in the world. You can't it's your enemy and all this. And then I was thinking about a talk I'd been to with the Soccer Gakkai about anger, and about how all emotions can have a positive and a negative side, including anger. So there is something positive about anger. What's positive about anger? Well, angry people can move mountains. It's how you handle your anger. That's the issue. It's not the anger itself. It's what you do with it.
Exactly.
So I put my hand up and said, but isn't there some argument to say, some Buddhist sects would say that all emotions have got a positive side? So if what would you say was the positive side of anger? And she said, there is none. But more importantly, she said, I don't know what other Buddhist groups say, because as you know, Linda, we only study Geshe-la's books. And there was something about the way she said it, this kind of smiling lips, but her eyes were like, looking at me as if, how dare you? That's the kind of, how dare you ask me such a question, you know. So I felt embarrassed and humiliated, sort of. I thought it was a very reasonable question. Why-
Absolutely. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she tried to make me feel, well, that's how I felt anyway. So I never went back after that. And then I moved back up to Yorkshire, and I started going to visit. I still had a couple of friends there, so I went there once or twice, and I wrote about this. And I turned up one day, and then it was all scandal time, because Gen Tubton had disappeared, stood down, because there'd been a sexual scandal about him. He'd been having sex with. I was like,
So
I,
this had just happened.
I was so
Just
shocked. Yeah,
it just happened at that time
yeah.
when you went back there. So what was that like? Did people talk about it? Was it clear what was happening? How were the higher ups dealing with that?
Well, I had just gone to visit my friends because I worked quite near the centre. So, I was working for social services in Yorkshire, and one of the places where I would go to work was just around the corner from the centre. So I popped in there. So I didn't never went to any of the prayers or meditation or anything. Just went to sort of say hi to the people I knew that was
Oh,
still,
okay.
and it was the girl with the OCD and the paranoia that I was talking to, and she told me what was going on, and I was so shocked because I'd been on a teacher training seminar weekend with Ken Tubton doing it, and he had been very emphatic about the fact that there should be no sexual relations whatsoever between the teacher and the students. So the fact that he was doing it himself
And
while
he
telling,
was a monk. He was a
and
monk
he was a
too.
monk, and he was telling us all that that was completely forbidden, and yet he was doing it himself. I was like, what? I was absolutely outraged. And at the same time, there was a big, I think there was a big coach, or maybe two coaches. I think there was only one coach. There was a coach in the car park, and I was saying, what? What's that coach there for? What's going on? And she said, oh, we're all going down to London. We're going to demonstrate against the Dalai Lama. I was like,
Oh my
what?
God. Yeah,
I didn't.
that's when they started. Yeah.
Yeah, I said, what? And so she said, oh yes, he's persecuting the Shugden people in India. And I said, are you really? Are you sure? And she said, well, that's what Lucy told me, and I have to have faith in my teacher. Otherwise, it's important. I have to have faith. If she says it, it must be true, kind of thing. And I was going, but have you seen any evidence? No, but she says it's happening. Okay, and you're going on a coach to London to demonstrate against Dalai Lama because of that. Is there someone knocking on the door for you? I can see them in, and I that was the end. Then there was no more for me. I said to her, "You're," just as she turned to go, I said, "You're out of your mind. You are out of your mind to do that." And so
So you never went back after that?
no, that was the last straw, really. That day when I went there, then I was like, nah, it's not for me. But it wasn't for ages, really, that I didn't think about it hardly at all after that. I didn't think about the NKT until 2012, actually. That's when I started thinking about them again. And that was because I went to see Handel's Messiah at the Albert Hall, and there was a man in the choir that I saw. I kept looking at him thinking, I recognize him, I recognize him. It turned out he was a monk, one of them. I worked out who he was, and he was this monk called Wang Dak, who used to teach at the Haruka Centre in London. I think he's still in the NKT. So he must be doing this, going off to be in the choir on the secret, because he wasn't in his.
Wow. Is he still ordained? Is he still a monk, you think?
I think he still is, yeah. So at first I thought he must have left. But then I saw a picture of him more recently, and I was thinking, oh no, he hasn't left. He's still in it. And so this was 2012. And then I came back and I thought, oh yeah, NKT. Oh, right. So I looked them up, and then I found all this stuff online about their protests against the Dalai Lama in 2008 as well as 96, and people arguing about it. And
How did that make you feel when you saw that?
I felt sort of validated, really. I was like, right, yes, I knew really, because there's when I did finally kind of pull away from it completely, I did sort of have this kind of thought, hang on a minute, I think that's a cult. but it was only after I'd it was only after I'd gone away from it altogether and then looked back, and then I thought, I think it's the cult. And then, but I didn't know anyone else was thinking that or anything. So when I looked it up, and I found NKT World, that website NKT World, and also Tenzin's blog, Difficult Issues. And I just started reading. And then when I went on a meditation retreat with Vipassana, the Vipassana Soka, no, not Soka Gakkai, it was Goenka, the Goenka Vipassana
10-day, the 10-day retreat.
Yeah, the 10-day silent retreat, which I absolutely hated, but I kept going back and I thought, I've got to get this. But I wasn't, I was hopeless at it.
Did you finish the 10 days?
Yeah, I did the 10 days. I can't say I
You
didn't
enjoy it.
No, well, I did enjoy it in a way, because I quite like the fact that I had nothing else to do, that you just go there and there's nothing to do apart from meditate, and that was sort of quite nice. But I couldn't actually do the meditation, this sort of sitting with strong determination where you don't move for an hour. No, I was constantly looking at my watch or looking at the clock, and much more is there. And I'd be going, oh, what am I going to think about today? Because I don't, this thing where you have to go down your body, sweeping up and down and all that. I couldn't get the hang of it at all, really. And but I kind of appreciated what they were trying to teach me, which was how to be present in the body. And I didn't really understand it at the time, but I thought, hang on a minute, this is meditation they're trying to teach me. I never learned this before.
Exactly, yeah.
I became quite angry then as well. I was like, I was in the NKT for 5 years. I never learned to meditate. And
neither did I. Yeah.
I was like,
and that's why I went there. I went there originally to learn to meditate, but
well,
that's the one thing that I never did.
That's what they call their thing, don't they? Learn to meditate, but you don't learn to meditate. You learn to do contemplation, yes, but not meditation.
Right.
Because their idea of meditation is, well, what they used to do would give you a talk so that you would develop this determination, and then your meditation was to just keep this determination in your mind all the time. So it's not meditation, is it? It's contemplation. It's brainwashing.
Yeah.
It's self-brainwashing.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you a question that is just weighing on my mind a little bit. Like often people like you and other people who we have talked to or whatever are referred to as survivors of the NKT. What do you think that means actually? Do you consider yourself a survivor? And what does that mean? What does that word mean exactly?
Well, I've never really related to that as a term, really, because I mean, well, I suppose it means that you came out of it. I think it relates more to people who were abused, and I'd never really felt that I was particularly abused. They took advantage of my goodwill and my hard work, but then all employers do that, don't they? So I don't really, they were my employer, so they wanted me.
I know, but usually employers pay you. Yeah, they don't. Yeah. The NKT doesn't pay you, right?
They didn't pay me, but they expected that kind of level of dedication that a lot of employers expect.
Professional conduct, right?
Yeah, and so I because I wasn't abused in the same way that other people were, really. I don't think. I mean, I never became a nun or they never took my money because I never had any money. Well, I had a little bit of savings that I would have put into a centre if I'd if they'd been trying to get the money for a deposit to buy a place. I probably would have given them the little bit of money I did have, but that didn't happen. I had terrible mental health problems afterwards, though. And it was partly caused by what happened there. The disappointment really had something to do with it, because I came out of the NKT quite sort of fired up, like I'm going to make a difference in the world. I'm going to work for social services in the children and families department, and I'm going to help people and make a difference. But actually, I just met another disappointment there. And I think it was just one disappointment after another, really, which helped sort of push me into my first bout of serious depression. I'd had depression before I joined the NKT, but not so serious, not so that I couldn't get out of bed, which is what happened then.
So did you connect your depression at that time to your NKT experience, or do you connect it to it now?
Only insofar as it was a great disappointment. Because I'd thought that I'd found the thing that I was going to spend the rest of my life doing. I was going to be on the path to enlightenment. I was going to become a teacher of Buddhism. I was going to be a career Buddhist kind of thing. And I was going to get on the fast lane to enlightenment, and I was going to be enlightened in 3 years, 3 days, and 3 months. If anyone was going to do it, I was going to do it, and it was a big disappointment because that didn't happen, and in fact, not only did it not happen, but I probably got worse in the sense of lack of ability to be calm in the face of things going wrong, and things went wrong quite badly for me in different ways. So yeah, I became very depressed, and they put me on antidepressants. It was the first time in my life I've been put on antidepressants. So that was in about 98, 99. No, 90. No, it was earlier than that. So I'm getting mixed up with the dates. It was probably 96, 97. So it was probably not long after I left the NKT, actually.
When did you leave the NKT?
Well, I left my Jamaica Centre in the winter of 1995, I think. And then I was still sort of hanging around on the periphery of it during 96. And that's when they started the demonstrations against the Dalai Lama. And then I got into this dreadful depression, which I got better from. They put me on antidepressants, but I started seeing an NLP therapist who sort of helped me, but I went from one extreme to another. And because I went on to Prozac, I went into a manic phase. Eventually I got diagnosed as having bipolar disorder, but I don't really think I have got bipolar disorder. I mean, it was a possible diagnosis of bipolar disorder, but I don't really think I had it. But later on, I had another even worse bout of depression, and that was in 2002. No, 2004. And I think what my experiences in the NKT had made that worse, because I had got into highest yoga tantra, and I'd started trying to use that practice as a way of avoiding myself, in a way. I started sort of trying to pretend that I was, a deity. So I'd be like, oh, I'm going to dissolve my body into emptiness, and I'm going to manifest as a deity now. And that kind of, among, doing other things, I tried to use psychedelic drugs as well, which made it worse. And I think I kind of slightly lost the plot, really. and became like I got delusions of grandeur and you know the way they talk about it in the NKT, oh, she is Tara, you're this and they're that, and so I suppose I started sort of thinking that I was somebody special, and then I eventually realized I wasn't somebody special. And that then
Right.
I went into another massive depression because I kind of came to realize when I was in my mid 40s, I suppose, that actually there's nothing special about you at all. You're just all you've got your gifts or whatever, but you know, you're not going to save the world, girl. You're not the Messiah. I had a bit of a Messiah complex thing going on, that I was going to, you know,
Well, that's definitely part of the NKT, the Messiah complex. Yeah, we have a job to do. We're working for every human being without exception. We're getting everybody enlightened here. We're gonna help the Kadam Dharma flourish all over the world. Da 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 da. There's just like so much of this stuff in the NKT. It is so easy to fall for that and start feeling important and special and in a way superior. I mean, it happened to me. I wasn't involved that long with them, and I certainly, I was certainly not as involved as you were, but it happened to me, and it happened very quickly. This sense
yeah,
of, now I'm somebody, and I know how things are, and I'm gonna get you enlightened, and I'm gonna get enlightened,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
let's get you enlightened, and let's, and
yeah.
you're ignorant. There's so much ignorance and degeneration, and like all of this stuff that you just hear all the time. It's so easy to fall for that, because it actually appeals to your ego,
Yes, that's
and
right. You go from being a bit of a narcissist, I suppose. I mean,
absolutely. You
we've all
become a
got.
narcissist, even if you've never been a narcissist, but you
Well, there
become a
is that. I
narcissist.
think I think we've all got narcissistic tendencies.
Sure.
That's in
Yeah.
everybody. Um, but what something like the NKT does and other cults is that they make that narcissism into a group narcissism, and then that becomes like that's okay then. It's okay because it's not about me, it's about the group. So that those narcissistic tendencies get fed and kind of encouraged.
Encouraged and
Yeah,
strengthened. Yeah.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
you become even more of it. And that I think that is kind of what happened to me really, because any the narcissistic tendencies that we all have and that, were encouraged in the NKT. And then when I left the NKT, I still took that with me, I suppose. Because I didn't fully,
Yeah.
because yeah, I identified myself as, I thought, well, I know that Linda Chardiello doesn't really exist as a, you know, inherently from its own side. And when I'll dissolve my body and my person into emptiness, and now I'm going to arise as the deity, and then I'm going to bless you all, and
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah. It's
my
great.
healing. I was working as a massage therapist. And what I used to do before I saw a client was I would, spend a couple of minutes going, okay, I'm dissolving my body into emptiness now. And now I am manifesting as Tara. And I'm going to go in and bring direct compassionate action to these poor people, who aren't as enlightened as I am.
So you were quite active for a while on anti-NKT forums and demonstrations against the NKT for a while, right?
Yeah.
I've seen some videos, and also in our group on Facebook, you were very active for a while. You're a bit less active now, but you're doing other things. But how was that for you? How was that period for you when you were doing activism?
Well, I was motivated by such a very strong sense of outrage, really. I was like, how dare they? I just couldn't I just couldn't understand how they could do what they were doing, and the hypocrisy of it. Everything they said about the Dalai Lama was they were talking about Kelsey Getse. They were talking about themselves. And I don't know. I mean, I've got a very strong tendency in me to fight for justice, you know. So I could see an injustice and I wanted to fight them for it, you know. I don't know really why I became so. I was very angry, as I said, after I went to that meditation, that 10-day meditation thing, and I was absolutely hopeless at being able to sit still and, you know, being able to meditate. And I realized I didn't know how to meditate. And I thought, hang on a minute, you know, I thought I learned how to meditate when I was in the NKT, and I didn't know. I haven't learned how to meditate at all. I don't know how to do this. I can't do it. And I was sort of angry, you know. I remember going into those sessions thinking, so, you know, what was all that they were teaching me? That wasn't meditation. I wasn't learning meditation. This is meditation, what they're trying to teach me here. And I should know, you know. So I went through a lot of kind of feeling angry, but cheated, you know. Yeah, I mean, I sort of, I do like a bit of a fight, you know. I am a fighter, and if I see injustice, I have a strong inclination to fight it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that they stopped the demos was partly due to you guys. I mean, partly you
Well,
and Carol and the others who were demoing and doing so much work
to be honest, if
to
it wasn't for the Tibetan community, though, in the UK and probably in Canada as well, but particularly in the UK, most of the NKT, no, hardly anybody came to the demonstrate. We did the counter demonstrations.
exactly, yeah.
But Carol came, Kieran came, and a lady called, oh, can't remember, her name slips my mind now. She's never been active online. Can't remember her name now. Haven't seen her for ages, but she used to come. And one or two other people came once or twice. But it was really me and Dal Say, I think his name was, in the Tibetan community that organised all the demonstrations. And it became quite
Against the demonstrations,
yeah,
right?
demonstrations against against the NKT, and I suppose I sort of enjoyed it in a way, you know, because I felt like I was giving them a taste of their own medicine, you know. Like when we went and demonstrated outside Tara Centre, we only went for one day. And when we left, we were going, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to bring the drums, the loudspeakers, and the bullhorns. See you there. You know, and there was a kind of satisfaction about sort of showing them up, really. And we did turn up one day to Putney, where Tubton was, as he was Neil Elliott then, he was giving a public talk, or he was giving a talk, and we turned up and we were outside with all the banners and everything, and he came out and we were following him down the road, you know, with the banners and going, trying to talk to him, and he was, you know, and it was very shortly after that they called off all the demos, and I thought, yeah, you know, taste of your own medicine. See how you look,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah, fantastic. So what would you say to someone who would like to practice Buddhism and or get on some spiritual path and like to try the NKT out? What would you say to a person like that?
I'd say there's a lot better things, a lot better options, really. I mean, I think if you just go to the general program just to get some ideas for, you know, to get some basic instruction, you know, I mean, it was useful, but just don't think that is going to lead to anything more. Because if you try, because that's what I do, so I'm saying, oh yeah, this is so wonderful. I want more of this. I need to get into this more deeply. But you don't get into it more deeply. Don't get into the Dharma more deeply. You just get into the organization more deeply, and you get into a lot of hard work and a lot of stress, and your practice will suffer. So don't do that. But I would say there's lots of other ways, especially now with the internet. You don't need to go to a centre, do you? I mean, people are doing it partly also because they want community.
Yeah, there are wonderful online programs now for free or for very little money. Very well
Yeah,
structured, great programs that you can
yeah. I mean, if
follow.
you want to learn to meditate now, you really don't need to go to a building somewhere. But I think the fact that people are so hungry for community is is that's that's the problem, I think. Is that there is very little sense of community. You know, people feel so isolated, and you know, they want to be around like-minded people, and they're not easy to find.
Right.
You know,
And
like-minded.
in the beginning, it seems like you find that with the NKT, but then it, at least in my experience, and in, it just, the price is just too high to pay, I think, both literally and metaphorically, the price you pay, yeah,
Yeah,
to be in the organization and to be involved with them.
yeah, yeah. I just don't. I don't think it's. I feel sad that people feel so lonely, really, that they want this they want to get community like that, and they can't find it. They can't seem to find it because that's what people say, don't they? Oh, I really want to find a group somewhere where I can find people that are like me, and they just don't.
Yeah,
These sort of groups don't seem to exist. You can try and create your own, I think.
exactly.
Well, that's kind of what I've done, really, in my as I said, I run these sound bath mornings at my house, and I have quite a lot of people who come, you know.
Wonderful.
I haven't done it for ages. And I found a really nice community with this Friends in Need group because I volunteered for them. Um, and I'm really good pals with others of the volunteers now. And I've got a community there with these people that I never had really in the NKT, actually. I never really felt accepted. No, but these friends that I've made now through this group called Friends in Need, which, as I said, is part of mine, the mental health program, they totally accept me, which is really, I find this really interesting, the fact that because I still get a bit bad-tempered, you know, I can be quite sort of irritable. I keep going on holiday with these guys. We go on cycling trips together. So we've been about 5 times now. And I get quite bad tempered with them because they're all a bit dithery and stuff. And I'm going, oh, for God's sake, come on, you know, hurry up. And, you know, not that, you know, do off. You know? and they just go, calm down, you know, and they just and they laugh at me and I laugh at them, and we just forgive each other
Yeah,
for the things when we misbehave, you know.
exactly.
Um, and you don't need to find a religious group to find a community, really. They're not religious. They're quite interested in what I talk about. They come to my sessions. I've helped them, they help me, you know, and I'd say for people who are looking for community, if you want to learn Buddhism, do it online. If you, you know, find teachers online, find programs online. There's plenty of them. But if you want community, go and look in your community for people who need help and do and become involved in your local community, support people in your local community, and you'll find like-minded people like that.
Exactly.
So that's kind of what I've done, and I'm really happy now. I'm in a very happy situation in my life. I work for the hospice as well. There's community there. There's a nice group of colleagues I've got. If I wanted to, I could get more involved in that as a community, but I'm already busy enough. And there's a woman that set up a community in Marlow. She's tried to create, Marlow's a little town nearby, not far from us, and she's a follower of Eckhart Tolle. She's a graduate of his School of Awakening or whatever it is. So she wanted to find like-minded people in the area. So she she joined a Facebook group for Marlow. She was already doing personal training work, but she was trying to find other people. So she set up this group. She announced it on this Marlow Life group. A friend of mine saw it. We went along, and I've become friends with her now. We're probably going to do a sound bath meditation day together. So you can find people in your area, if you just look around to see what's there, really. And instead of thinking about, I don't know, because I get a lot out of the fact that I help people, like with a hospital, going to people's houses and helping people, their families and the people who are dying. It's very rewarding, and it's very interesting, and it's also a great reminder all the time. Talk about meditation on death. Get a job working for the hospice, then you'll be meditating on death every day. Because you're seeing it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's so many other less dangerous, less risky ways of both studying Buddhism and being with other people, finding community.
Yeah, and it's
right?
more real as well, and
More real.
and it's true compassion. It's like you said, people go to that because they're good-hearted people. They want to be compassionate, and they want to be a force for good in the world. So that's why they go, and then they find themselves involved in a group that doesn't actually practice any of this.
Well, they're taught that is not compassion. I was taught that what we normally think of compassion is not compassion, like helping, which is actually not true. That's not what the Buddha taught, right? There's different types of compassion. But I was taught in the NKT that if you help somebody in need, or you give to a homeless person, or you help someone who is dying or whatever, that's not compassion. The only compassion is if you give the Dharma, if you give the Dharma to these people. That's the only compassion.
They don't know what
I was taught.
Well,
which is not true. The Buddha actually taught that whatever you can give at that any given moment is compassion. They also told me that Christian compassion is not compassion, which is also not true. Christian compassion is also compassion, so.
Well, I think the Christians actually are probably, it's more embedded in their religion. I don't. Do you know the scientist Rupert Sheldrake? Have you heard of him?
Yeah.
Well, he was into Eastern religion, Buddhism, and all that for many years, but in the end, he went back to being a Christian because he said that the Eastern philosophy, that particularly the philosophy of karma, makes people less compassionate. You think about the Hindu, the caste system. Where's the compassion in that? It's like, well, you're a leper, or a beggar, because that's your karma and that's what you deserve.
Right.
You have to stay in your, and in Buddhism, that the doctrine of karma is easily twisted to become an excuse not to help someone.
Yeah, well,
That's what,
certainly in the NKT, the way the NKT interprets karma is that is you get what you deserve, but karma is way more complicated than that, according to the teachings. I think it's not as simple as that.
well, I think it's a much more subtle. I think karma is a more subtle thing. To do with, it's to do with patterns. You know? Like if you smoke a cigarette, you create the karma to smoke another cigarette because you're creating a. That's what it is.
Right.
It's more like that, I think. Um, but to use it as an excuse not to help someone is quite common in the certainly in the Hindu religion, and I don't know about other Buddhist groups. I don't call myself a Buddhist anymore. No, I'm not. I'm really. I mean, I found.
Yeah, but you're still on a spiritual path, as far as I know. You
Oh,
still have a
absolutely,
lot of spirituality in your life.
absolutely, yes. But I I'm not a Buddhist. Uh, there's certain things about Buddhism that I don't relate to really, you know. And I
And
just
that's perfectly fine, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, I'm
Okay.
yeah, it's been a long talk. Sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah, Linda, thank you. Thank you so much. I think we've touched upon the most important things. I know we haven't talked, I would have asked you a lot more questions, and maybe we'll talk sometime again.
Yeah, I think
But I just really wanted to hear your story and how you have elaborated this experience with the NKT and how you're doing now. I think we've covered that,
yeah.
right?
Well, I'm very, very well now, and I'm in a very happy place in my life. I've got community. It's not a Buddhist organization. It's not any religious organization. It's a community that I found through reaching out to people who who need support, and I've been able to help them, and they help me. And that's great, you know.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Gabriella. I hope people find this helpful or interesting. I don't know, but
yeah,
you
I
do.
hope so too.
Thank you for doing
Every
it.
little bit helps. Thank you so much.
All right then.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.